On deck at mic 2 is Kathy Fulton.
So we have Andrew at mic 1. And who is at mic 2?
Kathy Fulton.
Kathy Colton? Fulton. Kathy, you're at mic 2. Go ahead,
If
Andrew.
I could just...
It's all yours.
My wife, Tova Felder, is actually one number previous to me in the testimony order. And web-based assessment has helped New Jersey school districts put their priorities in the right order by forcing a larger portion of their limited budgets toward computer hardware and network infrastructure and away from burdensome frivolities like libraries and media aids, foreign languages, music, and art. Along the way, this initiative has vastly benefited those most important to us, specifically the good people of Pearson plc, a multinational publishing and education company headquartered in London, England. Catch them on either the London or New York stock exchanges. The PARCC assessment has also revolutionized how teachers channel their energy and dedication by forcing them to apply benchmarks and test practice items in a frantic attempt to prepare students to do well. Because we all know that fear is a great motivator. A healthy dose of fear instilled in both students and teachers really inspires them to get out of bed in the morning and get down to the exciting work of education. But best of all, the deceptively worded, developmentally inappropriate, user-hostile, and inordinately lengthy PARCC test will make our beautiful children into just what we wish for them: disaffected, hopeless, frustrated children who hate school and feel stupid. And so I ask you, what great state wouldn't want a workforce that grew up being emotionally and creatively deadened by having to endure weeks of state-mandated abuse each and every year? Once all the data is gathered on this grand experiment, PARCC can then apply the appropriate cut scores and tell us how we're doing. How great is that? It's like a thermometer where you get to write in your own marks and then decide how hot or cold it is. Because after all, how can we prepare our children to succeed without intentionally failing them? So please, commissioners, whatever you do, don't recommend to Governor Christie that he follow all those other states who have already abandoned the PARCC consortium. After all, he knows that the best way to ensure quality education is to shell-shock teachers, abuse children, and intimidate parents. Am I right? Thanks once again for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew.
Tova Felder at mic 2 on deck.
8 for delivery there.
Hi, my name is Kathy Fulton, and I have a daughter that's a junior in Jackson Memorial High School. While planning my testimony for today, I thought about people who inspire me to stand up and take action against ideologies in which I do not agree. I immediately thought of President Ronald Reagan. Trust but verify is a signature phrase President Reagan used frequently when discussing U.S. relations with the Soviet Union. I Googled the term trust but verify and found the following explanation. It is a form of advice given which recommends that while a source of information might be considered reliable, one should perform additional research to verify that such information is accurate or trustworthy. In 2010, 45 states trusted but did not verify Common Core and standardized testing. The 45 states signed on to the U.S. Department of Education's $5 billion race to the top funding. But there were conditions attached to this money. They had to agree to evaluate teachers to a significant degree by the rise or fall of their students' test scores. They had to agree to collect unprecedented amounts of personally identifiable information about every student and store it in a data warehouse. They have to agree to adopt college and career-ready standards. These 45 states signed on to these not yet finished Common Core standards sight unseen. This egregious top-down federal and state control is what infuriates me, as well as millions of parents, teachers, students, and taxpayers across the country. An appropriate analogy would be investing in a stock that you have not researched and find out later that you have now lost all your money because the company went bankrupt. The PARCC test has not been verified. New Jersey is administering a test to our children which has not been validated. Validation takes time. Numerous studies must be implemented in order to verify its effectiveness. Common Core standards are also not validated. So how can you justifiably administer an unvalidated PARCC test based on a set of unvalidated state standards? Please explain that to us. In closing, the second person who inspires me is Becky Gerritsen. She is the woman who testified before Congress on the targeting of conservative groups by the IRS. Her impassioned testimony conveys my sentiments on how New Jersey is forcing the PARCC test and Common Core on our children, despite the fact that only 10 states out of 24 remain in PARCC, and numerous states have rejected Common Core. Becky Gerritsen stated, "I am not here today as a serf or a vassal. I am not begging my lords for mercy. I am a born free American woman, wife, mother, and citizen. And I'm telling my government that you have forgotten your place. It is not your responsibility to look out for my well-being or monitor my speech. It is not your right to assert an agenda. The post you occupy exists to preserve American liberty. You have sworn to perform that duty, and you have faltered. We, the people of New Jersey, refuse the PARCC test, and we refuse Common Core."
Thank you, Kathleen.
On deck at mic 1 is Joe DeAndrea.
Good evening. My name is Tova Felder. I am a former elementary school teacher in the Westfield Public School District, a current religious school teacher in Bloomfield, and the mommy of one fabulous, twice-gifted 10-year-old in Clifton. I'm speaking to you with all of my hats on because they all matter. Commissioner Hespy, I found out today that you and I share a bit of history. I came up through the Willingboro school system, kindergarten through high school. I was part of the last graduating class of John F. Kennedy High School, which I think was already gone by the time you got there.
It was, unfortunately.
And I'm still friends with many of my classmates. I received my master's degree in early childhood education from Boston College in 1997. My heart set on working with children and sharing with them the spark of joy for learning that I myself had. For 10 years, I did just that. In Boston, our kindergarten science curriculum was very flexible. So when we studied earthworms, I brought in a bunch, and we examined them up close, but didn't hurt them. And we watched how they responded to light and dark. The kids took notes in their developmentally appropriate invented spelling, drew pictures, and asked questions that were in their heads, not in a textbook and not on a whiteboard prompt. Despite a fairly inflexible language arts curriculum in Westfield, because there was no such thing yet as a pacing chart, I still had lots of room to improvise. My third grade class wrote letters to the company that published our literature series one year. They'd found grammatical errors in the textbook, you see. So I used it as a jumping off point for teaching formal letter writing, even though it wasn't part of our curriculum. Later, they used that new skill to write to a favorite author. We were so excited when he wrote back. I taught my students the song Free to Be, and we had many discussions about the importance of being who you are, not who or what others think you should be. That was also not in our curriculum. We sang that song every week and proudly wore our tie-dyed t-shirts, which were a first day of school project. A few of those kids are now young adults in the arts and are friends with me on Facebook. Hi, Emily, Brian, and Julian. Here's where I say, evaluate that. I resigned from my tenured public school position when my son was born, and I realized the impossibility of being the kind of mommy I wanted to be and the kind of teacher I needed to be. Watching my son move through kindergarten and the lower grades, I have become distraught by what has become of public education, what enthusiastic educators are now up against. I understand, Commissioner, that you would like input from us about what we should do to address the societal problem where half of the students are graduating without the skills and knowledge they need. That's easy. Fix poverty. The millions going to Pearson and Google would make a nice start. That would, of course, mean that all of these special interest groups, like the PTA, would have to stop taking money from Bill Gates. But you really want to address the problem of educational inequality, right? I read through your interim report dated December 31st, 2014. Thank you for making it available to the public. The one thing that leapt out at me over and over was the language used in it. It does not read like a manifesto of, "We're looking out for your kids." It reads like a business proposal. And while that surprises me not a bit, it does kind of make my heart sink and my skin crawl. My child is not a cog in the big machine. My child is not a product, as Dana Agreski called them in her interview on New Jersey 101.5. My child's life is about so much more than preparing to fill a seat in some college auditorium or a vacancy in one of your companies. In fact, it might surprise you to know that neither of those eventualities was on our minds at all when we decided to have a baby. The thing that struck me the hardest in that long report was the cold detachment from any real humanity. Somewhere along the way, you have all lost sight of what childhood is supposed to be and what education is supposed to be. Children are wanderers. They are dreamers and innovators. It's in the DNA. They're born that way. A good education nurtures and encourages that. It speaks to their innate curiosities and leads them down paths of investigation and inquiry. The classrooms of today are kind of like boot camp. The teachers are practically given scripts to follow and rigid pacing schedules to ensure that everyone in the country is on page 43 at the same time. That is the opposite of the personalized education we have been promised. It reminds me unpleasantly of Pink Floyd's Another Brick in the Wall, where the children all look the same, march in place but go nowhere, and are not allowed to think for themselves. That can't possibly be our idea of an outstanding education. I know it isn't our governor's. His kids go to private school. We don't need PARCC or a battery of any other standardized tests to tell us if our kids are college and career ready. My son is 10. I can tell you with 100% certainty, he's not ready. Neither are his friends. They are ice cream ready, engaging literature ready, playing make-believe at recess ready. Commissioner Hespy and members of the committee, I don't want my child to park. I want him and every other child to keep moving. Thank you.
Amy first at mic 1, and on deck at mic 2 is Donna Andreen.
My child is the one of many across the state who has been dragged into this void between the old and the new testing. He has been taking the NJASC for the past few years, and I have seen the changes that have been implemented during the hasty transition to PARCC. I have seen the homework change this past year, and I have seen my son struggle to try and conform to this new way of thinking in preparation for the exam. Whereas children coming into the public school system currently are being taught Common Core from the beginning of their schooling, my son is now being taught that the instruction he has received until this point is no longer valid. Not only does he need to learn new objectives, absorb new information, and meet new expectations and goals, he has to learn a whole new way of communicating the information, using different answer formats through broad testing interfaces. The children of New Jersey are not guinea pigs. PARCC has never been field tested, and despite proof from educators across the nation that this test is riddled with confusing question after question, software glitches, and unfamiliar material, and yet it is being forced upon our youngest citizens, carrying the weight of teacher evaluations and potential graduation. As citizens, we have been bullied by the state for far too long. Our teachers have been beaten down by a thankless system and disrespectful leaders, and now we are losing these amazing educators at a record pace. Our kids are being farmed out for profit to the highest bidder and referred to as quote-unquote products. As citizens of a country founded on freedom and innovation, we can no longer accept the inferior quality of life in this state. This is our home, and these are our families. This is our government and our future. It is not a business venture or an experiment. Education these days no longer allows for creative expression or exploring interests on a whim. Remember field trips? The farthest my child travels with his class these days is to the computer lab to familiarize himself with PARCC practice tests and improve his typing ability. This is not childhood, and this is not a quality improvement to my son's educational experience. These kids have the rest of their lives to sit behind computers and navigate technology, which incidentally will be completely different by the time they graduate. Placing such high, great emphasis on the technology of today to prepare them for technologies that do not exist is in and of itself wholly nonsensical. The fact that we are phasing out staples of education such as history, science, literature, and the arts to prepare these children for computerized testing, but no one even bothered to evaluate, is shameful. I send my child to school to be inspired by teachers who their dream was profession, by their love of learning and the potential day they have always seen in children. I want my son to experience the impromptu lessons and off-the-cuff conversations that we have had when a class gets so engrossed in a topic that inspiration drives the questions and leaves the students sitting at their desks even after the bell has rung, with so much pressure on our children to keep their teachers employed and being told that they will not go to college if they fail this test. These conversations will never happen. PARCC is not right for our children. Common Core is not right for our children. New Jersey has given the world some of the most innovative and creative minds in the world. Why would we want that to stop now? You have an amazing resource in your teachers and your parents, and yet the only people that have a say in how we educate our children seem to have a copyright symbol after their names. As a parent and a citizen, not only do I refuse to allow my child to take the PARCC, I refuse to allow corporate America to buy our future. We demand a state directive to school district superintendents that provides a policy for refusals, a policy that institutes a non-punitive alternate environment during testing. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
On deck at mic 1 is Patricia Stanley.
Okay, right after you, Donna,
Yes.
we're going to take just a little 5-minute stretching break, so just everyone just stay in place. I don't want anyone getting blood clots, so give us 5 minutes here, and then we'll get back on. I think we've probably got another 2 hours ahead of us here, so we're going to stretch for 5 minutes. Go ahead. What? been 2 hours and 10 minutes, so if you don't mind, we'd like to take a 5-minute break. Go ahead, Donna.
My name is Donna Andreen. I'm a parent of a 6th grader and an 8th grader in the Wall Township School District who will not be taking the park this year, next year, or any other year. I was fortunate. My district respected my decision as a parent and will make accommodations for my children and other children in our district whose parents are also refusing the tests. Many of my fellow parents are not so lucky. They have been met with fuzzy interpretation of a law. They have been threatened with punitive punishment of their children if they don't take the test. They've been encouraged to participate in truancy by being told if their child does not test, they must be kept home. We are exercising our right as Americans to peaceful civil disobedience in refusing these assessments. There are so many things wrong with Park and in turn Common Core, it's difficult even to know where to start, and I certainly will not have time to delve into all the reasons now. We aren't protesting because, to quote Arne Duncan, we are suburban moms who are finding out that our children are not as brilliant as we thought they were. And we are not protesting because we want trophies for our children. We are protesting because Park testing and Common Core material are rife with flaws, wrong answers, and questionable content, which are apparently top secret and off limits to review by parents and teachers. We are protesting because you are using our children as unpaid research subjects for a curriculum and a test that will inaccurately measure our children's abilities and strengths via an unproven and unvalidated assessment. Even Bill Gates, who's a major financial contributor to this educational holocaust, says that we will not know if this works for at least another 10 years. We are protesting because even though we have been told ad nauseum of this fantasy, and I'm sorry, Mr. Hespy, I think this is your quote, the benefits include the ability of Park to provide parents with important information about their child's progress, and the fact that the Park tests will allow for timely and detailed diagnostic information about individual student performance that can be used to pinpoint areas of difficulty and customize instruction for students. There are no facts to back that statement up. There is no proof that Common Core and Park are even remotely capable of achieving this when parents and teachers are not allowed to review tests or scores and receive back no meaningful information. And by the time the information, whatever information does come back, our kids are already back in school for the following school year. Passing scores won't even be determined until after the Park has been administered, thus impossible to help teachers, parents, or children. We are protesting our children's tests being graded by $13 an hour Pearson temp employees with a few weeks of training who have been harvested off the internet and then have access to our child's data. No one is qualified to assess my children better than their teachers, and certainly not someone working off the coming off the street for a wage below McDonald's. We are protesting the fact that no one can guarantee where the enormous amount of personal data that will be collected on our children and our families, if it's safe and secure. No one can tell us who has access to this information being collected on our children and our families. We are protesting the fact that we are paying an astronomical amount of money for tests and educational materials for American children to not just a foreign-based entity, but a foreign-based entity that is under criminal investigation for financial crimes, and with investors that include the Libyan Investment Authority, who is a 3% stakeholder in Pearson. We're protesting because of the valuable class time lost because teachers are being forced to forego doing what they love and what they do best, to become nothing more than test proctors who are gag-ordered not to discuss or have an honest opinion on Park with parents. Although the New Jersey Department of Education apparently does not support our teachers, we do. And we protest not just for our children, but for our teachers who have been made to feel that they cannot speak out for themselves for fear of punishment. We are protesting against the lies that we are failing in the global educational arena. According to the NJEA in a memo dated April 15, 2014, in a comparison of New Jersey's 8th grade NAEP science scores with 8th grade science scores in countries worldwide, only students in 3 Asian nations scored higher than New Jersey public school students. In a comparison of New Jersey's 8th grade NAEP math scores with 8th grade math scores in countries worldwide, New Jersey public school students outperformed all but 5 Asian nations. New Jersey schools do not need fixing via park. We are not asking for more information. We are not asking for clarification. We are not asking for guidance. Finally, please be very clear, we are not asking for permission. We are New Jersey residents, we are taxpayers, we are voters, and we refuse the park and reject Common Core. You need to listen to us, do some serious soul searching on the things that you have heard in these hearings, and do what's best for the children of New Jersey, and know that we are not going to be quiet and we are not going away.